Welcome, Ajahn Kovilo. Thank you for coming and welcoming me, I suppose.
Good to see you, Ajahn.
Yes, likewise. And welcome to our everyone joining online. We have as usual, this is the Wednesday evening conversation, and we have one of these each month. And it's also a chance for those tuning in to ask questions or bring up topics they'd like to discuss. So feel free to type anything into the chat and that you'd like to talk about. Um, we had planned to speak today about gems in the suttas, and before that, we'd planned on finding Dhamma in friendship. But we recently learned that friend of ours, a monk named Tanjagaro, had started walking Tudong um, up the California coast and is possibly within range of a cell tower or Wi-Fi and might be able to zoom or restream in, which is the platform we use from the road. So we thought actually dedicating this episode to him, if he ends up being able to join us in about 15 minutes, would be great. So until we do that, Ajahn Kovilo, would you mind explaining what Tudong is?
Yeah, it's a great pleasure that we can hopefully zoom in with Tanjagro, who is on Tudong. Yes, so Tudong is, many people might be familiar with this, but certainly most humans are not familiar with this. Tudong is the Thai pronunciation of the Pali word Dutanga. So in the earliest suttas, actually in the commentaries to the earliest suttas, Buddhaghosa, specifically in the Visuddhimagga, a commentarial text written about 1,000 years after the Buddha, elaborates 13 Dutanga practices. Dutanga literally means those practices which are difficult and which are grating a little bit on one's sense of pleasure and comfort. And so the 13 Dutangas, let's see if we can name all of them. They're roughly around making one's lodging, making one's food, and making one's robe. These are three of the four requisites of a monk. Making these more difficult, kind of stretching one's comfort levels with these things. So, with regards to one's robe, there's the Dutanga of only wearing three robes or wearing just robes which you've found cast away, and then that involves a lot of sewing up of one's robe. And then that might be the only two about robes. And then we have several about alms food or about food in general. So one of the Dutangas is only eating alms food. One of them is while on alms. So basically, that alms basically means when a monk walks through a village and um, just eats the food that's put in their bowl. They're not eating at a monastery. And this is what Tanjagaro will be doing. Um, so, yeah, is doing every day for all of the calories that he eats will be given to him in his bowl in this manner. Another Dutanga is not stopping at just the fancy houses, the nice houses, but going and stopping at every single house on one's alms round. Another of the Dutangas is only eating in one session, so the one meal eater. That's held strictly in some forest monasteries. Ajahn Nisabho and I hold that strictly when we're at Clear Mountain. And yeah, please, other alms-related dutangas, Ajahn Nisabho? This is a long answer, but
Eating out of one's bowl, I think you mentioned that. Sleeping under the open sky. There's certain ones which are more relevant to what Tudong actually is, and that would certainly be one of them. Yes.
yeah, so sleeping under the trees, sleeping in a forest, sleeping in a charnel ground. And when this concept is translated into Thai, the Thai word tudong basically is a practice of pilgrimage where you are going along, living just as a bird. There are two wings with your robes and your bowl. And basically, that's what Tanjagara is doing. He's got a backpack, but basically, very minimal camping in America, surviving on alms food, and living a very simple life on the side of the roads. So
Thank you, Ajahn. And have you gone all Tudong before, Ajahn? And who were you with when you did that?
I've done it twice in America, and I did it with yourself. I think you and I did ours in, November of 2017, 2018.
I don't remember the year, but I remember the month because it was very cold.
It was cold.
So,
Yeah. You were colder than I was, not because I'm more hardy, but just because I had a sleeping bag
you
and
did, you did.
a robe.
You, any accounts of that or any stories from that and why, I mean, why do people do go Tudong and what in that first trip kind of, uh, mm, embodied that for you? Um,
Yeah, it's a lot there. Yeah, I think our trip on a whole was about, I think we were going to do 2 weeks. It may have gotten shortened to 10 days. But yeah, it's just a practice which I found shakes up one's um, the norm. It shakes up the norm. So I had been living in monasteries. When I have lived in Thailand, I've gone for shorter or longer periods of Tudong with a bunch of monks, but I'd never done it in America. So doing it with you for that period of time, we did the planning, and you and I didn't know each other that well at that time. But it's quite interesting how maybe that's my main takeaway at the moment is just how uh, spending difficult periods of time with another person can form a bond, which, yeah, it's lasted 5+ years, and now we're building a monastery together. Yeah, because you were going through difficult situations. Please.
if I can jump in, just there's a it's almost not just the difficult situations as well, because I mean, what you said is true. There's like that was the beginning of our deeper friendship, which was great. And there's something about like accidentally camping in a bunch of poison oak, which really kind of brings people together. But there's there's a quality with Tudong where it's not just getting to know the person with you. There's a certain intimacy with the world, which is kind of pretty unique because you're completely, you sort of walk and then just have faith that something will take care of you. You'll find a place to sleep. Someone will feed you, even though they don't know what you are. Um, and and it's interesting because when you come to there's certain moments when we've been creating the monastery as well, where we've kind of had to make this decision about like, okay, how vulnerable do we make ourselves? Like, do we get an alms coordinator who makes sure we have something to eat every day? If people don't, there's the ethic of Tudong is really this complete surrender, and I find the difference between complete surrender and like kind of hedging your bets and having a you know I don't know, a gift card or someone you can call. It's night and day, and Tudong is one of the few situations I found, Ajahn, where, like, you're really completely out there, and it reminds you that when you really jump, you do get caught and, by something, and magical things happen, like, the first person who offered alms to us had met Ajahn Chah. He was a Goenka teacher, and he was the first person to give us food. So I was really heartened by, yeah, the intimacy with the world, but also, yeah, with the person you're traveling with is pretty unique. If
Mm.
you get along, it can be interesting either way, so
Yeah, those are good reflections, and I mean, intimacy with the world, um, of people. So, I mean, living in a monastery, you can become a bit cloistered, like, literally. We're meeting a very self-selected group of people who are coming to the monastery. They're on their best behavior. They're having to keep by the rules. They've written 2 months in advance via email to schedule their performance and agreed to, keep all the rules. Whereas you go into on Tudong, and you're just meeting. You have no idea who you're going to meet. Every morning, we had no idea who we are going to meet. We didn't have a any kind of alms coordinator or someone looking after us when we did ours. And there's a beauty to that. We didn't know who we were going to see. They didn't know they were going to see us. There's surprise and creativity and spontaneity in it, which really feels alive. So there's that type of meeting the world, but also the meeting of the world on a natural level, meeting the environment. In a monastery, many monks do. Our friend Tansu Hajo, has lived even at Abhayagiri Monastery, lived underneath a tarp for 2 years or so, just voluntarily. But most monks at most monasteries are living in huts or buildings of different kinds. Whereas when we're on pilgrimage, we are just sleeping under the trees or on top of poison oak as it goes. So yeah, you really get to see how friendly or harsh the environment can be when the walls come down.
Mm.
And even living close to the land like we do in these forest monasteries, it's a very different thing when uh, I think for much of our trip, it was actually raining in addition to being cold, if I'm remembering correctly. Um, so
Mm. Yeah, I think all that rings really true. And I know we did an interview with Ajahn Yaniko about sort of the sacredness of faith and what faith means. And there's something about going, it's I don't know how lay people get that same experience, but I think it's important to try to find places in your life where you really can release and feel the fact that something does meet you. And having that reference point of Tudong and that faith that grew out of that has kind of been essential in building Clear Mountain. Just the idea that we could come to Seattle and people would be interested out of nowhere. And it also kind of creates this, it really clarifies the ethic of, you know, for example, we don't do suggested donations. It's just you can give and however much you're inspired. And those are small points, but they're not small at all. And I find Tudong is one of the few places where you get to see like it gives you faith that the world will take care of you if you jump into it with some morality and practice, something like that. Does any of that ring true, Ajahn?
yeah, for sure. And I think looking for ways that this practice of Tudong can be practiced, like it's not, when we do it as monastics, it feels quite natural. It's not that big of a jump. We have this space. We don't have normal jobs. We don't have a normal time schedule. We can actively schedule Tudong into our life, for particular periods of the year. We don't have children. We don't have dependents. Um, so it can be a bit simpler for us. But yeah, finding and thinking about ways that aspects of this Tudong ethos, bringing the sacredness, as you're talking into their lives in some kind of way of bringing uncertainty into their, the fundamentals of existence, where they sleep and uh, etc. I recently met this couple from India who actually had been doing, I think, a 2-month pilgrimage in India
Mm.
around to different holy sites. And yeah, I don't think it's at all uncommon. I mean, there's a whole, there are whole subcultures which are doing this and just not making a big deal about it.
Mm.
People who live kind of on the edges of society, lay people, non-monastics who are just living a camping life. So yeah, I'm curious if you had anything more to say about that, of ways to bring the sacredness with which we can touch into on Tudong, ways that lay people can find analogs for that, or um,
I mean, I think if people are willing to go to Thailand and you dress in white and determined to go to monasteries here and there, I think this would be different if you're a woman. You might want a male companion as well, but you could determine to do that without money, and I think you would be fine in Thailand if you did it like that, wearing white as a symbol. Um, so I think there's moments of surrender like that. But yeah, beyond, I can't think particularly at the moment about other analogs.
that's a great idea, though. I mean, in a Buddhist country, it's much easier. People know the renunciate role. Um, would you be up for a question?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Right. So, can you talk about renunciation and joy? Thank you so much, Venables.
Um, Yeah, so this is, I think, a really important point in our, maybe particularly in the Theravada as it's articulated in Thai forest, because Thai culture is, um, there's a lot of metta undergirding it. You know, a lot of people grew up in the countryside, raised by, you know, 3 different families. They lived right next to other community, and then, you know, so a lot of the teachings have been given in a way that's quite meant to balance that out. A lot of fire and brimstone, a lot of strictness, and you take that and you bring it to a Western context with your Judeo-Christian upbringing, with kind of atomized families and individuals, uh, in a culture that's kind of grown out of a Northern European ethic of, like, rules, because if you didn't chop your firewood, you were dead in the winter, you know? Um, all those things mixed together to mean that I think that fire and brimstone ethic of, or emphasis on renunciation, can really be, when brought to a Westerner, can be a bit like mixing acid with acid. Um, and so I think there's a lot to be said for just a softness and using the metrics of, you know, flourishing, normalcy, and warmth as your guides. Um, I think that one beautiful thing about our tradition is it does set up really clear walls and boundaries. Um, you know, they're very bright lines around, these are the precepts, this is the uposta today, this is, you know, the form. Um, but I do find people can get quite obsessed with that, and it's a bit as if we've spent all this time building this cathedral, and then we just stand with our hands pressed against the cold stone, just staring at it. And I think there's a real important place in this tradition and practice for turning away from the stone after you've built the structure and looking to what that structure's made room for in your life. You know, the rose window blooming on the floor, the liturgy, the smoke, the incense, and metaphorically, and to say that after, you know, or in tandem with us creating those boundaries, to also turn towards joy and call it forward, and really emphasize it in our practice, community, giving, art, all those things. And speaking of joy, we just had a Tanjagaro join us. So welcome, Venerable. Can you hear us? Tanjagaro, can you hear us? That's a no. Hello? Okay, Tanjagaro?
Maybe we'll turn his camera off in case he doesn't know it's on.
Until he gets in. All right, we'll keep an eye on
Hello?
him. What about you, Ajahn, while we're waiting for Tanjagaro to kind of figure this out?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and hopefully we can put it to Tanjagaro as well. How to bring joy, or finding joy in renunciation, specifically as it.
Hello?
As
Oh, good. Hello, Tanjagaro. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
You guys are really choppy for me.
That's okay. We can hear you now, but your video is off, which maybe is the only way that we're going to be able to speak. Do you want to try to turn on your video one more time, Tanjagaro, and see how it works?
Test 1, 2, 3.
Okay, we can hear you. Good.
Mm.
Can you hear us?
I can barely hear you guys. It sounds very choppy.
Okay.
well, we can hear you well. Well, there he's gone. So that's the contingencies and the uncertainness of modern Tudong. So yeah, this brings up a question which hopefully we can ask Tanjagaro if he comes back tonight, or if we're able to. I think he'll be on pilgrimage for another couple weeks. Do you know, Ajahn Nisabho? How much?
Yeah, I think quite a while actually. So I can post his website into the chat for people who want to look him up, support him possibly, and he's back.
Can you hear me?
We can. We can. Can you hear us?
So yeah, my connection is really bad. So yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on, other than maybe just the connection I have.
We can try this out, but if it still stays choppy, we can just have you in a different Wednesday as well. Where are you? Where are you, Tenjagro, and how long have you been walking Tudong so far? Okay, this Tenjagro, I think the audio connection isn't that great actually. Yeah, we may have to zoom you in a different Wednesday. Is that okay, Ten? Venerable? All right. I'll chat with him and tell him that we're gonna zoom him a different day. No, he's gone. Well,
So it goes. So it goes. And this, I mean, this is a, yeah, everyone can check out his website. I believe he's just north of LA right now. This is April 19th. So people can keep an eye out on his website. I think he has some kind of tracking device, modern Tudong, so people can see where he is and what he's up to. He's posting. So
he'll be keeping a blog. So yeah, follow up with him and feel free to support him from afar if you're able, or know people in the area who could go and find a monk and help feed him.
yeah.
Ajahn, first, did you have anything to add to what I said? Or we could go into this next question.
Not much to say, just that renunciation, the word, you need to find a word that works for you. I mean, nekama is the Pali. It's a central part of right thought or right intention, right resolve. The second fold of the eightfold path are intentions towards renunciation, which is the opposite of sensuality. But yeah, finding a term, a concept, a way to get your mind around it is really important. So whether that's translating it as simplicity or just joyful renunciation, because the Buddha is not teaching, the Buddha's path is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, beautiful in the end. And it's one of just increasing and more refined and more intelligent and wise joy, learning, getting better at your pleasure. So yeah, finding a way to get your mind around this renunciation and it being totally inclusive of joy. So
And I find, yeah, finding skillful means of that is really, I really, for example, art, I really have found to be a helpful one, and making sure to cultivate it in meditation. I think it's a benefit of breath meditation and other things is when the mind becomes kind of joyful, it will get calm more easily as well. Ajahn, which of the Dhutanga practices do you find to be the most challenging and why? And others can type in questions if they want as well.
So for me, one of the Dhutangas we didn't mention, which doesn't have to do with robes or alms food or lodging, is not lying down. So nesajik is what it's called in Thai, and nesajika in Pali. And it is what it sounds like. It's basically taking a practice of not lying down for a prescribed period of time. So whether that's, some people do what other monks call vampire practice, where you don't lie down at night, but you sleep during the day. But there are some monks like Reverend Hung Sure, Ajahn Jayasaro, Ajahn Amaro, these different monks of kind of our teacher, father, parent generation have done these practices for years. Ajahn Jayasaro did it for 3 or 5 years. Ajahn Amaro did it similarly for a long amount of time. Reverend Hung Sure did it for 20 years, something like that. And I just find it not supportive. So these are optional practices, and they're ones which you need to just test for yourself And for me, the touchstone of whether these Dhutangas work is, do they increase my capacity for awareness? Do they increase the quality of my mindfulness? And the 1 meal a day practice, that is very supportive. But this not lying down, I just get dumber and dumber and less aware. The capacity for my mindfulness just is like on a downward trajectory. So yeah. How about yourself, Ajahn?
No, that rings very true. Although I've never tried, sleeping. One of the Dhutangas, there's different levels. So there's ones about sleeping out in the open for long periods, and I'm sure that would get to me after a time as well. But yeah, not lying down is pretty. It can it can be quite intense. At many of our monasteries, there is every week there is a nesachik, so people will take on sitters practice as a community until 3 a.m. or the morning. Um, I find that sometimes, even if it's very painful the day of, the meditations the day after you've slept can be a lot. It can be actually quite helpful in that. But where some of the Dhutangas, the renunciation has this quality of simplicity, and like you said, simplifying, and that's a really beautiful metric. Like you said, eating 1 meal a day, eating out of the bowl. Um, uh, there's taking whatever dwelling's given to you is another one. But this with something like Nesachik, it's much more against the grain. And I mean, many of you will know, or some of you will know, the story of Ajahn Jayasaro. Is when Longpo Cha was on his deathbed, they kept thinking he was about to die, and so there was a moment where they said, "Okay, he's only got a few days left," and Ajahn Jayasaro determined to take on the sitter's practice until Longpo Cha had passed away, thinking he'd only be living for a few more days, and he went on living for another 2 or 3 years, I think, and some people said it was, Longpo Cha's classic sense of humor. So Ajahn Jayasaro really he kept it up, but he said it was one of the hardest 3 years of his life. He even walked Tudong in India while he was doing it, so yeah.
Can I ask a question of you? This next one.
Yes.
Ajahns, do female monks go on Tudong?
We know, Aya Soma, just has been going, with, a few others in Italy, I think, on Tudong. Um, there's some more restrictions. I think generally, the bhikkhunis are, encouraged to go with another, bhikkhuni as well and travel in at least a pair because it is more dangerous. But she's one of the few I know. I also met a seminary in India on this last trip who'd walked Tudong, I think alone in Australia for several months, actually. What about you, Ajahn?
Yeah, so I put a link to Aya Brahmavara. She's currently on Tudong, I believe, in England. So yeah, Tudong practice. Oh, I'm sorry, in northern Spain. So yeah, I put a link to her blog so people can check that out. But yeah, it's yeah. I don't know. I don't think I know other bhikkhunis who are doing that. And Siladhara, I think I have heard about it. I mean,
Initially, they walked from Chitters to Amravati, at least that, and probably others.
right, the nuns in England.
Mm.
Yeah, good question.
We speak about how joining together with others in Dhutanga practice builds joy, faith, and determination.
Yeah. So I've gone on Tudongs, with Ajahn Nisabho, so just myself and he, which was a great experience. You really get to know the other person, and yeah, you're kind of suffering together, and that forms bonds. I've also gone on Tudong with maybe in Thailand. There's an annual Tudong pilgrimage that many of the monks at Wat Nanachat, the international monastery, will do, walking through the Kanchanaburi forest up to Daodam, which is on the border with Burma. So you're walking through this pristine rainforest and just finding very secluded villages. And I think I've done that at least once or twice. And you're with a group of maybe 20 other people, 20 other monks. And it's a very joyful thing. It's joys of camping to some degree. And there's a bit of, when you're with your friends and they're bearing up, or at least you're not seeing them suffer, then it buoys you up. Or if you're not seeing them go through, the cold, which, and in my experience, the monks who I've been on Tudong with don't are not indulging in gossip or complaining, which I think is really really useful, because that would become depressing. Whereas it's the opposite, monks not focusing on hardships or kind of impaired relationships in different ways. So it sets this bar, this foundational level of trust among one another. And in terms of faith, I mean, that's one thing in Thailand, is that oftentimes what a tudong is you're going from one monastery to another monastery, but along the way, you might pass through a bunch of other monasteries, or be able to visit great teachers, saint monks who are saints, who you have faith in. That's always a part of traveling from northeastern Thailand across the country, even though a part of that will be in vans. They'll stop in Bangkok to pay respects to Lumpur Biak, who's just an amazing beacon of faith and amazing, um, object of faith in a certain way, paying respects to P.A. Payuto, many different monks kind of hopping along the van until you start the Tudong, actually in the forest in Kanchanaburi. And then, just determination that we've been talking about. So do you have any thoughts on that? Or
It actually is connects into something Ajahn Kovilo and I were talking about this morning, about how isolated people are in the modern era, and how that happened, and just the loneliness epidemic. I think there's a recent statistic that sort of the younger generation is more lonely than the over 70 crowd, which is quite worrying. And a lot of that, I think, can be attributed to um, how we live distant from one another, how obviously connected to the phones constantly, in cars, scheduling. And there's something about Tudong in terms of moving at the pace of walking, where there's so many routes for karma to open in. I remember initially one of my Tudongs was from Oceanside, near LA, to Ajahn Jeff's monastery, and the Greyhound dropped me off at the wrong bus stop, and they said, "Don't worry, it's just a 5-minute or a $5 ticket to where you need to go." And I said, "I don't have $5." So I ended up walking those 2 days instead. But within just by walking in those 2 days, I met, 7 or 8 or 9 people who stopped, or a Jehovah's Witness who was walking along, and we talked about mindfulness. And it's this reminder that the world is quite ready to meet you if you take out the AirPods and get out of the car. Um, and yeah, and that is a joining together, if not with the people you're walking with, then with the world again. And I am curious, we were speaking about how people can take the ethic of Tudong back into their lives, and maybe a lot of it's just really recollecting those places where we are cutting off possible routes of comic openings, um, and streamlining our life. And, instead of asking the neighbor for a tool we need, buying it, where I think that's a really relevant recollection is how do we change our lives, at least in certain places, to the speed of walking instead of the speed of driving and buses and everything else? Because yeah, I mean, I know, I think Ajahn Kovilo, you've referenced this, but Emerson, the word saunter, he uh, etymologically related to make something sacred, right? To make a landscape sacred. And
Sans Thierry, yeah. Thoreau in his essay on walking.
Sonterry,
Walking, yeah.
Mm, yeah. So I think that is a good recollection is like, where in our life can we open up space to move at the speed of walking and just at least some room for the world to enter? Um, I think that is meaningful.
Mm. Yeah, that's a great recollection. Yeah, and perception to move at the rate of walking, or awareness to move at the rate of walking. I mean, just the things you see, it's so different walking along the side of a highway versus being in a car going on that highway at 70 miles an hour. I mean, just amazing. Like,
Mm,
just off the highway, and for the most part, we would try to, you don't wanna be walking directly on the highway. I think it's illegal in America, but, walking on parallel roads, like older roads
mm,
that go through cities. This Highway 101 is a, huge superhighway here in California, but there's this, uh, old El Camino, Real, or the old, or Highway 1, which are much
mm,
smaller, and, you stop along, they're basically towns every 10 miles or so, which was, I think, intentional based on early Christian missionaries. So yeah, you see a lot more, and you see some beautiful things on the side of the road that you just have no idea. You're just passing by so much, and, yeah, it slows the mind down in a certain way.
mm.
It's a good point. Are you up for another question?
Only if I can ask you first.
Okay.
Dear Ajahn, how can we help a fellow practitioner who says he feels too tired of restraining his desires and then can thus no longer feel the joy in practice?
Yeah. Um, well, it's good to, help your friends and be able to relate to them wherever they are. And it's possible that they might have an unrealistic, picture of the path, and an unrealistic expectation of their own capacity to walk the path. Maybe they're trying to meditate more than they have the capacity for at present, or maybe they're trying to cut off more outflows of these asavas than, their joy can't keep up. So that's, I mentioned the touchstone of these Dutanga practices is awareness. What can I take on? What difficulties can I take on such that I can not only maintain the level of mindfulness that I have, but actually increase it? And similarly, with practices in general, taking joy as a touchstone as well. So when you're restraining your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, restraining what you're looking at, the media you're consuming, the entertainment that people are indulging in. Um, yeah, um, don't go too far beyond your joy level. Kind of
Mm,
stay within, on this fuzzy line of what's difficult, and past uh, your comfort level.
mm,
But going too far, yeah, things just feel dry and feel, um, yeah, jai hang. This is a Thai phrase which literally means a dry heart, and that's just like the parchedness of, yeah, when the heart has this piti, this Thai word piti, this joy, this rapture, um, not just in meditation, but in daily life, there's this moisture to it. You feel nourished. You feel like a well-watered plant, a not overwatered plant and not underwatered plant. Whereas, yeah, you push too hard, try to be too macho, then yeah, a plant starts dying. It's not getting um, that joy of, that moisture of joy and contentment. Um, yeah. What What are your thoughts, Venerable, about being too tired of restraining?
Yeah, no, that's macho plants are no breed. I think those are all really good points. I think finding your limits. I think there's important, so much of where joy comes from, at least I think until probably deep, deep states of meditation, is from exchange with the world. And many of you will know that distinction between chanda, which is like zeal. It's very generative desire. So like Dhamma chanda, um, and versus tanha, which is, thirst, craving, which is much more consuming and feeding. And I think a huge portion of the path is really uh, intentionally trading out our means of feeding off of the world for chanda, for giving into the world. And I think one mistake people make is they just try to cut off the tanha, they try to cut off the feeding and just be okay in the silo. And I think you really have to pretty actively not negate the valence of the attracting things to you, but rather, or feeding, but reverse the valence and give. And that's where joy really sparks. So and I think you see this reflected in the first of the paramitas, the spiritual perfections of dana, giving, and that's so undervalued in so many articulations in the West. Um, so yeah, you do want to, take on certain restrictions that seem workable, like Ajahn Kovilo said, but for every one you take on, see if you can be, you know, uh, maybe you stop watching Netflix as much, but are you instead going for a walk with a good friend? Are you writing something, a poem? Are you um, doing some good or volunteering one night a week, you know, really actively replacing tanha, craving, with chanda. Because my experience is chanda doesn't leave a residue in the heart. Not good Dhamma chanda, not the same sort of residue. It brightens the heart and prepares you to sit. So I think really conceiving practice as a broad scope. It's not just meditation and renunciation. It's how can you give? And that's the first paramita for a reason. Um, it should be emphasized, and sometimes you have to move through life a little more at the speed of walking to find all the places where you can give. So yeah, I think that's one of my reflections, Ajahn. Do you have any? Yeah,
No, that's great. Yeah, and might have a whole conversation just about your that distinction that you're making in the translation of zeal as this generative desire. That's an interesting. I've never seen it
I think it roughly
mentioned.
aligns with dopamine and serotonin, but I'm not totally certain about that. With being more dopaminergic. Anyways, go on, Ajahn.
Yeah, so we've only got 2 more minutes. Maybe, Ajahns, do you take a layperson with you or to prepare food in case you don't get food? We do have Ajahn Jagaro back, possibly. Ajahn Jagaro, if you can hear this, maybe you can take this
I,
last question. We only have about a minute. So,
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, venerable.
Okay.
Welcome.
Technology is working. I'm actually, yeah. Okay. So, what's going on?
Well, well, we do have a question for you, but first, let's just start with the basic question of where are you and how many days?
I'm the kind of border around Oxnard, Ventura,
Hmm,
and near the Santa Clara River, if anybody knows where that is. So
all
I'm
right.
about to head over the Santa Clara River in probably about 10 minutes.
How many days have you been walking so far, and how many
I
more days are
just
you
just
planning?
started, just started. So basically, I started on Sunday, and I was actually just hanging around the Cameron Buddhist Monastery for the last uh, couple days, and basically I left to do my basic second day of walking today. So I just literally just started.
Well, Ajahn or Tenjagar, we have to transition over to Zoom just about now,
Okay.
but you can join us there if you would be interested. And just for our
Okay.
YouTube viewers, how can people support or find you? We posted your website in the chat, but yeah, how
That's
can people
that's
support you?
probably fine. I'm just actually it's a delight to see both of you, venerables. I would Anjali, but I would drop the phone. So yes, so it's very good. It's very good to see both of you. I guess you guys have you do a different. You do like something here, and then you do like a Zoom meeting.
We're about to transition over to Zoom right now, actually. So
Okay.
you're
Okay.
welcome to join us there, unless you need to go back to you need to reach your destination.
I whatever you like. Can I just use the browser to connect to Zoom?
I don't know, but I'll text you the Zoom link. Yes.
Okay. Well, hopefully it'll work. Okay.
We'd love to see you. So we'll
Okay.
see everyone over on Zoom in a
Okay.
few moments. And thanks for joining us, even briefly, Tanjagaro.
Okay. All right. Bye bye.
Ajahn Kovilo?
Well, yeah, just a quick answer to that this question. Yes, there are many different ways to do Tudong. So Tanjagaro did not take a layperson with him, did not request a layperson follow him. Ajahn Nisabho and I have not done that, but other monks do. Ajahn Jodipalo is going on a Tudong later this summer with a layman. That these groups that go in Thailand oftentimes have a number of different lay people going with you, but usually it's not to make food, but just they're living in a very similar way, following along with the monks and maybe not even bringing any money. But there are different ways to do it. But Ajahn, it's been great talking with you. And
Likewise.
yeah, move over to Zoom and see people next week, next Wednesday. I think you'll be giving the talk, Ajahn.
Great. Thank you, Tana. See you all soon.